morning to you all, the Camnet TV viewer. This is the Breakfast Show, a show that comes to your screen every morning from 07 hours to 09 hours, where we bring you nothing but the best of what is happening around. We discuss, of course, topics that pertain to the well-being of human beings in Zambia, and of course, other important aspects that speak to the future generation. We all know that this morning, elections have commenced in Kabushi for a member of parliament. The 2 seats fell vacant after the Constitutional Court notified the election of Boma Ndusambo and Joe Malanje on several allegations of malpractices. Those who are joining us this morning, I am your host, Prudence Chota, and we will be discussing a lot of important aspects going forward. And we know that the topic of CDF has been quite a mammoth thing to even explain. A lot of questions have been asked, a lot of projects been rejected, a lot of people protesting as to why that has been the case. So hopefully in studio today, we will be joined by a permanent secretary from the Ministry of Local Government, who's just going to help us understand why is it that some projects under CDF are rejected, and the review of the CDF guidelines or acts, will it improve the uptake of the 28.3 million kwacha from 25.7 million last year, which of course has seen a lot of challenges in terms of its implementation. So going forward, are we going to see an improvement? We will discuss that later on in the program. But even before I preempt ourselves, let's get to hear what the doctors have to say. And remember, this is a phone-in program where you can just call and make your contributions and submissions with regards to topics that we are going to be discussing. Some of the stories that we are going to be zooming in that are making headline, that made headline, pardon me, in our news yesterday night. We know the court yesterday made a decision, so let's get to hear what you have to say. Do you think the Kabushi and Kwacha parliamentary by-election will erode investors' confidence? These are some of the things that we are supposed to be analyzing. I don't know what you think, but investors are equally watching the political space in Zambia. So do you think the decisions that have been made or the judgments that have been passed by the courts of law are going to enable our investors lose confidence in the political sphere of Zambia? Let's get to hear what you have to say with regards to that. But before we go any further, let's get to hear what the doctors have to say on the Doctor's Corner this morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Rafat Basit Masa. I'm coming from Medical Women's Association of Zambia, MWAS, and I'm from University Teaching Hospital. I'm working in Department of Surgery. We have been talking about very exciting topic, that's burns. We've talked about introduction of burns, we've talked about causes of burns, we've talked about symptoms of burns, we've talked about treatment of burn. This whole week we've been talking about also complications of burns. Today we're going to talk about prevention of burns. Remember, we have talked about burns, what causes burns. Remember, we talked about things that cause burns are hot water, oil, porridge. Then you can have acids, you can have alkalines, you can have electricity, you can have so many chemicals, you can have so many things that causes burns. And these burns are quite devastating, because it totally changes the life of a person. So we talked about also the symptoms. We said the burns are very painful, they become red, there is loss of skin. So we also talked about types of burns. We talked about first degree, we talked about second degree, and we talked about third degree. We talked about first degree, which is more of superficial burns. They can be handled quite well with just ointments and a bit of cleaning around. But second degree burns are slightly deeper than the first degree burns, and they need to be cleaned under supervision. So you find that they are also very painful, and they also cause you to not to move a part of your body because you are so much in pain. So it's also something very, very difficult and devastating. Then we also talked about third-degree burn, which are the most devastating burns because they burn your organ can be burned, your bones can be burned, your muscles can be burned, you can be really burnt deeply. And those burns actually have no pain because you have lost all the sensation in that area of your body. If it's a very big area, so it means you have lost sensation in that whole part of your body. So you find that that causes you to actually lose a lot of fluids. You find that your kidney starts to fail, your heart starts to dysfunction, you lose a lot of blood, you become very dehydrated. So all these factors that come in as complications of burns. So in terms of prevention of burns, let's make sure that we prevent our burns. We make sure that we keep ourselves safe. When you don't have electricity, when you switch on candles, make sure the candles are kept somewhere far away. They should not be so close to you that you end up, because majority of the kind of patients we receive, they sleep in the night. You find that they have put candles in their close to them, and you find that candle falls onto the blanket gets burned together with the patient, and you find they actually get very, very severe burns, and it's so difficult and it's so devastating. Getting burnt is not a nice thing. Everyone wants to have their skin the way they are. It's not nice to get burnt and lose that beautiful face of yours. It's very, very depressing. We also have people we have majority of children getting burnt, which is a very, very sad, it's a very sad thing for us, because children are our future and they are getting burned, which is not a nice thing. So you find that majority of children are getting burnt because of they are kept with the maid, and majority accidents happen because the parents, you find the father and the mother have gone out for work and they are left with their nannies, and somehow they get burned, which is also very sad. So we have to ensure that when we are keeping children, other people's children, so please make sure that you look after them like your own child. Make sure you protect them from stoves, from electricity, from hot pots, hot oil, all these things. When you're cooking in the kitchen, tell them not to enter the kitchen until they are done with the work. This thing of putting pots and hot things on the stove and leaving that place for a little bit of time, it's already enough time for a child to go and touch that thing and burn him or herself completely. So it's something which we can prevent ourselves. Make sure in the bathtub, when you're filling hot water for a child, ensure that you see the hot water yourself, fill it with your hands, and make sure that it's not too hot, because that way you also burn the children. We've also received people who have been burnt like that. So you make sure that it also psychologically depresses you. There are a lot of people who have been burnt, great percentages. You find they are alive, but they are always depressed. They have tendency of they don't want to live anymore because they feel like they are no longer beautiful anymore, and they feel like they are different from the rest of the world. So they have started isolating themselves. They become very, very depressed, which is not a nice thing, because we all want to see each other happy. We also want to see each other healthy. Being healthy it's very happy. There's a lot of happiness of being healthy. So ensure that we protect ourselves. Your sockets, please ensure that you keep them away from children, because the electrical burns that we receive are very, very deep. They are very hard to also to treat as well, and they are also very difficult for the patient, because, for example, one area has been burned and they cannot live like a normal person. They cannot write books anymore. They cannot study. They cannot do a lot of things. That becomes very difficult. So make sure that we keep our children safe from getting burnt, because in UTH we receive so many burn patients every single day, which can easily be avoidable And majority of these children get burnt with their nannies. It's very rare that mothers actually they get burnt with mothers. So please make sure that when we are leaving our children with nannies, we make sure we speak to them very nicely to tell them that please look after my child and make sure that he or she does not get burnt. Because getting burns, you end up spending lots and lots of time in the hospital. That's also very depressing, because you find that you are in hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks, and time goes, and even after your child is fully functional, you find the child is depressed because of the huge trauma that he or she has gone through. So please make sure that you protect everyone else and yourself. So our take-home message is prevent is better than getting cure. So prevent yourselves from getting burned. Prevent your little kids from getting burned. If you prevent yourself from getting burned, then you will have none of these complications. So please ensure that you look after yourselves and you look after our children. My name's Dr. Rafat Basit Masa. I'm coming from Medical Women's Association of Zambia, MWAZ. This whole week we've gone through burns. We'll be bringing you different types of exciting topics that you'll be learning from us every single day. Every day you'll be learning different beautiful things. Being happy is being healthy. Being healthy is being happy. So make sure that we all live healthy and happy. Please keep watching Camnet, because it will bring you different topics with different complications, different preventions, and different ways of looking into it. Thank you very much.
Prevention of burns, that was the topic that was being discussed this morning by Dr. Rafat. I hope we have learned one or two things on how you can prevent burns. Remember, burns come with a lot of pressure, not just at a particular period when someone gets burned, but even in the days to come, because they leave a permanent scar for those who are unlucky. For others, they've walked away from it and their skin repairs, but for others, it leaves a permanent scar that will remind you of the pain that you had to go through during that period. So because of that, it is important for us to prevent burns at all costs. Do not leave braziers, for those of us who usually use brazier for cooking, in a house or where there are children playing around. Let's take responsibility of our health. Our health is our wealth. You cannot make wealth when you're not in good health. The period that you will be spending going to a health facility when your child is burnt, or even yourself, you can use such time actually to do productive things that are going to earn you an income. So burns can be prevented if you follow the right procedure or prescriptions that the doctor was just from talking about. So let us ensure that we follow what the doctors said this morning on Camnet TV. And then for those who are watching us, this Camnet TV Doctors Health Corner is up for grab in case you would want to sponsor this program, so that we continue seeing the doctors come on the program and discuss other important aspects. You can come through and sponsor the program, and we continue hearing what the doctors have to say on Camnet TV Doctor Health Corner that comes to your screen every morning from Monday to Friday. Even right about now, we are going to look at how is it that our local currency is performing against other major convertibles. This is a breakfast show on Friday where we specifically speak business, and Money Market speaks to the business sector of what is happening around. So how is it that our local currency is performing? I am excited to even mention that Kwacha so far is one of the best performing currencies in Africa, and I hope we keep this going even as we are looking at economic recovery. There you have it. The Zambian Kwacha against the Great British Pound is buying buying at 17 kwacha 81 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 16 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the United States dollar is buying at 15 kwacha 82 ngwe and selling at 16 kwacha 13 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the euro is buying at 15 kwacha 49 ngwe and selling at 15 kwacha 79 ngwe. The Zambian kwacha against the South African rand is buying at 0.86 ngwe and selling at 0.88 ngwe. There you have it. That is the money market for this morning. In case you are planning on buying goods from South Africa, I'm sure you know where you stand with the local currency. Kwacha has been performing quite better, and we are hoping to see this performance of our local currency begin to reflect even in the prices of goods and commodities on our market. I was just reading through a post yesterday where people were complaining and trying to understand what economics is being played, where the local currency is performing better, but what we are seeing in supermarkets that mostly depend on importing the product is that the prices are even higher than they were when the Zambian kwacha depreciated. So everyone is asking, what can that be and how is this even possible? What economics is being played there? I'm not an economist, but I'm just trying to read through what was said yesterday by some of the viewers, or rather some of social media users who've raised concerns on the fact that our local currency is performing better, but we are not seeing it reflect on the prices of goods and commodities. Going forward, we hope to see that begin to reflect. Not forgetting what is happening today. Polls have opened in Kabushi and Kwacha constituencies. The polls opened as early as 06 hours. Though there is a low turnout of voters, we hope during this program we will be able to show you some of the things that are happening, even pictures if possible of what is happening in Kwacha and Kabushi. There is a low turnout when the voting just commenced, but we are hoping to see a lot of people come and vote for leaders of their choice. But the question that we are asking is, will the elections in Kabushi and Kwacha, the by-elections for parliamentary, also erode investors' confidence? Will it signal a negative perspective to our investors out there, or will it be a positive one? I would like to hear from you, the viewer watching Camnet TV, and of course those who are in Kwacha and Kabushi. You can just shout out to us on this program and just let us know what is happening in your area. Give us a feeling of what is happening where you are voting from. In the program today also, we are expecting to host the Ministry of Local Government Permanent Secretary Administration, Mr. Mambo Hamaundu, and we are going to be discussing why is it that some proposals under the Constituency Development Funds are rejected. If you are someone who applied and your proposal was rejected, this gives you an opportunity to just call and ask those questions that you've been wanting to ask to the relevant authorities and of course to the Permanent Secretary today. Also, if you want to know what criteria is used sometimes to select these proposals, this is a program that you have to be watching this morning. Let those questions that you have with regards to CDF be answered by the Permanent Secretary in studio today. But before we go to that, we are talking about Kabushi and Kwacha by-elections. What has necessitated the elections to go ahead? Yesterday, the Constitutional Court of Zambia did make a ruling whether the elections should go ahead. So we are going to zoom into that story that made headline in our news yesterday. Miriam Kayamba, our court reporter, told us that the Constitutional Court has ruled that the proceedings in the High Court granting a stay of elections in Kabushi and Kwacha are a nullity, as the 21 days period within which to challenge the eligibility of candidates has lapsed. The court has also ruled that proceedings in the Court of Appeal are equally nullity. Earlier, the Court of Appeal noticed that an order by the Lusaka High Court made last month suspending the by-elections in Kabushi and Kwacha constituency is still in effect. A panel of 3 judges said this after lawyer representing former Kabushi Member of Parliament Bomando Sambo and his counterpart, former Kwacha Member of Parliament Joseph Malanje, asked the court to stay the by-elections scheduled to take place today in 2 respective constituencies. The court said it cannot put more confusion as the suspension of the by-election was still in effect, adding that all that it did was stay the proceedings that were before the High Court till the determination of the case before it, and note that the suspension earlier issued by the High Court was not in effect. So this was the Court of Appeal that gave this ruling yesterday. What is it that I'm talking about? We are going to zoom into that story that made one of the headlines yesterday by our reporter, Miriam Kaimba.
The country's authorities are pushing ahead tomorrow, the 21st of October 2022, with by-elections in Kabushi and Kwacha constituency, following a Constitutional Court ruling on a legal challenge to the said by-elections in the respective constituencies. The legal merry-go-round over the parliamentary petition has finally come to a close, with the Constitutional Court having the nerve to do what they failed to do earlier this week. The Constitutional Court has ruled that the proceedings in the Lusaka High Court suspending the by-elections in the two constituencies is a nullity, as the 21 days period within which to challenge eligibility of candidates has elapsed, further adding that the proceedings in the Court of Appeal are equally a nullity. This was in a case in which United Party for National Development Kabushi candidate Bernard Kaningo had petitioned the Constitutional Court seeking an interpretation of Article 52(4), which stated on whether the 21 days that are prescribed under the Constitution to hear matters of nominations regarding members of Parliament can be stayed or extended.
That the Electoral Commission of Zambia is free to proceed with the elections without having to file fresh nominations, because the stay that was earlier granted, because of the lack of jurisdiction on the part of the court, it is now a clear case of what happened on the 14 days interpretation of the decision of the same court, Concord, in the matter of President Chilema now, and Geoffrey Bwaliamwamba versus Edgar Gwalungu, Inonge Mtukawina, Electoral Commission, and the Attorney General. So the court was fortified by that decision and stated that the Constitution has clearly stated in mandatory terms that the High Court shall decide the matter within 21 days from the date of filing such a petition, and upon expiration of those 21 days, the High Court has no jurisdiction, and no any other court has jurisdiction to extend or abridge the time in which that petition should be heard.
Earlier, the Court of Appeal observed that an order by the Lusaka High Court made last month suspending the by-elections in Kabushi and Kwacha constituency was still in effect.
Meaning that everything that is going on in Kabushi is an illegality. The state, as well as ECZ, are part of that illegality. And we've acknowledged their impunity before the court, and we will go ahead and argue this matter next week, Friday. Whatever the outcome of tomorrow's election will be a nullity, and we'll challenge it.
This statement left the opposition Patriotic Front with some hope, knowing fully well that if the elections were to proceed, they would go back to court challenging the legality.
That there are still men and women in this country who are willing to defend the Constitution. And this court has demonstrated that they indeed are going to stand up to defend the Constitution. They have made it very clear that the stay of the elections that was handed out by the High Court is in effect, is in force. My advice to Hakainde Hichilema is, please come back to Lusaka, come back to State House. There is much more work to be done here. Come and whip your ministers, some of whom are being embroiled in corruption cases.
However, little did they know that the Constitutional Court was this afternoon going to change everything through its ruling. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
There you have it. That was a report done by one of our reporters, Miriam Kaimba, over the ruling that was done yesterday by the Constitutional Court that ruled that the proceedings in the High Court granting a stay of election in Kabushi and Kwacha are a nullity, as the 21 days period within which to challenge the eligibility of candidates has lapsed. That was according to the court. And again, the court goes on to say the court cannot put more confusion, as the suspension of the by-election was still in effect. So I don't know, I'm just a journalist, not really a lawyer, to understand the two statements. For me, that seems a little bit confusing, where the Constitutional Court ruled, the Court of Appeal rules that the stay of the election in Kabushi and Kwacha as challenging the eligibility has lapsed. But at the same time, they say the court cannot put more confusion as the suspension of the by-election was still in effect. What does this really mean? Quite a number of confusion in the interpretation of the law. And as we are speaking, the by-election in Kabushi and Kwacha for a member of parliament of course, taking place. For those who are in Kabushi and Kwacha, let's get to hear what you have to say. What is the mood around that area? We have been formally informed that the turnout has been low from the time the voting opened at 06 hours this morning, but we are hoping to see more people come and choose the leader of their choice. So if you are still sleeping and feeling lazy, in case you're in Kwacha and Kabushi, just go and do the right thing. Go and vote for that candidate of your choice in these elections, and let's see how matters unfold, considering that also this matter is still before the courts of law. Boma Lusambo and John Malanje, of course, are still petitioning the court to ensure that the election do not take place. Of course, they are taking place. Quite a number of confusion there. But speaking about elections, we know that there was happenings in 3 constituencies when they were filing in their nominations for council chairperson by elections in Lundazi, in Chama, and in Mukoshi district. So Minister of Home Affairs yesterday, Jack Mwimbu, who was told by Parliament to come and present a statement on the violence that were reported in these 3 areas last week, yesterday did brief Parliament over what transpired. And we aired that story in our news yesterday, where Minister of Home Affairs Jack Mwimbo says he cannot implicate the United Party for National Development, UPND cadres, as being perpetrators of political violence that occurred in Lusangazi, Mukoshi, and Chama district during the just ended nominations for council chairperson elections. Mr. Mwimbu, who briefed Parliament on the alleged political violence, says police are still investigating the matter and that so far there is no proof that the UPND members were involved. Mr. Mwimbu says his government has already arrested a number of UPND cadres who have been implicated in violence and that no party has so far been implicated as having perpetrated violence. Meanwhile, government has urged the Zambia police to expeditiously bring to book all those involved in political violence, regardless of their political affiliation. The Minister of Home Affairs has distanced the UPND as having been the one who started the violence in Mkushi and, of course, in Lusangazi until investigations are done. For now, there is no proof linking the UPND to that kind of violence. What am I talking about? Let's zoom into another story that made headline in our news yesterday, where Mr. Mwimbu defended his cadres in Parliament yesterday. Political violence was alleged to have characterized the Lusangazi, Mukoshi, and Chama district filing in of nominations for by-elections for council chairperson positions last week. The United Party for National Development, UPND cadres, were incited as having been the masterminders of the violence, which saw some opposition Patriotic Front supporters being injured in the act.
Successfully filed in nominations, except that there were a bit of pockets of violence.
Members of the opposition, however, did not take the matter at heart but complained before Parliament in the manner in which their members were handled, which saw the Speaker of the House commend the Home Affairs Minister to issue a statement before Parliament today, 20th October 2022. And Minister of Home Affairs Jack Mwimbu, who addressed Parliament today, despite agreeing that 2 districts among the Mukoshi and Lusangazi were marred with violence, has denied to point at the fact that violence was started by the UPND supporters.
Difficult for me to mention a political party or an individual who has not been identified and mentioned. The issue at hand is that the PF were attacked and investigations are going on. I can mention the PF having been attacked because the record is there. But there is no record to show and evidence to prove that the UPND were involved. I can tell you the last time I made a statement here, I did mention that UPND were alleged to have committed an offense In this particular case, there's no evidence.
The opposition members of parliament were still not satisfied with the fact that the minister could not publicly point out that the UPND members were the perpetrators of violence.
Brother Honorable Minister, Home Affairs and Internal Security, Jackie Mimba, I want to roll your mind. 2 years ago, you were seated there after Honorable Kampiongo issued a statement. You remember our conversation outside. And as a lawyer, you are a custodian of law, and you are a defender of human rights. And I expect the position that you took, strong position against violence, the way the president has condemned. If you don't mention my brother, tomorrow it will turn.
If Honorable Nakachinda was harassed by whoever, and according to Honorable Member of Parliament for Pambashe, being harassed by UPND cadres, he should have gone to the police.
Meanwhile, Mr. Mwembo has since directed the Zambia police to expeditiously bring to book all those involved in political violence, regardless of their political affiliation.
Let me warn all those perpetrating violence, specifically political party cadres, that they are not an exception to the provisions of the law. Perpetrators of violence will be dealt with regardless of political affiliation.
Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News. There you have it. Minister of Home Affairs Jack Mwembu yesterday did mention to the fact that the violence that took place last week in Mkushi and Lusangazi, where as a result, some UPND cadres were implicated as having been the ones who were perpetrating violence against their opponents, the UPND. The minister said that information is not true until investigations are concluded. As it stands, there is no evidence that is pointing to the UPND as having been the ones who were purporting violence, but rather the opposition patriotic front. For them, there is evidence that they were attacked, but the attackers in this case have not been named, and the minister says not until investigations are concluded, we cannot conclude that it was the UPND members. Let's get to hear what you have to say as members of the general public with regards to what the Home Affairs Minister Jack Mwembu said in Parliament yesterday. Those who were in Mkushi and of course Lusangazi, maybe we get to hear from you. What was your experience and what did you witness as it stands? Pardon me. Mr. Mwembu says the UPND cannot directly be pointed as having been the ones who started violence because there is no evidence so far linking them to the violence that transpired last week in Lusangazi and of course in Mkushi district when they were filing in their nominations for council chairperson by elections. That was also one of the stories that made headline in our news yesterday. But again, in our news yesterday, a 41-year-old mother and holder of a degree in business administration has opted to acquire a passenger service vehicle driving license and drive a public passenger minibus to earn a living. Let's zoom into that story that made headline yesterday.
She describes herself as a hustler. She starts work around 06 hours in the morning to start ferrying passengers from Minhood Mutumbi, where she stays with her husband and 4 children, to the central business district. She bought the minibus to venture into transport business and chose to drive it herself. You can tell that she's an experienced driver, having started driving 10 years ago. She has made samosas before, has a means to earn a living to support her husband and take care of their 4 children. She also owned several businesses and once worked for an insurance firm. How has she found herself in a men-dominated field?
Reason being, there are no jobs currently. I've been applying and couldn't find anything. So I thought instead of just staying home, I could be doing something. I looked at any other businesses and then they were not appealing. Okay, you'd think of clothes. There are a lot of people selling clothes. There's a lot of salaula. You'd think of maybe hairdressing. I can't do that. My hands can't plait. So the easiest for me, the quickest was driving passengers. I've tried to apply. I'm a holder of, I'm a degree holder actually, business admin. I've worked for an insurance company, so I left because I wanted to go back to school. So after school, I tried to apply. I couldn't find any job. So especially looking at it to see that there are a few ladies who are doing this. But otherwise, the drivers, my fellow PSP drivers are kind of supportive.
She has advised young women not to wait and find formal jobs, but hustle if they want to have a meaningful life. She has also attributed the rise in road traffic accidents involving passenger minibuses that have led to fatalities to 40 minibuses that are on the road.
The belief is finding something to do, whatever your hands find it to do. That's a scripture, you can do it. So if it means, if one finds that they can plait hair, it doesn't matter how far they've gone into education, if they can't find a job formally, they can do anything that they want to do.
For now, she remains a bus driver, but quickly adds that you can never predict the future. Tito Kalama, Camnet News.
Victoria Majoni there has defied all odds to start up a business that is male-dominated. She is, of course, a bus driver, for lack of a better way to call them, but she is, of course, a bus driver, and she says better to hustle than do nothing. Our ladies, this should be a challenge to those of us who feel we cannot do certain things, but only go maybe on the street to beg for alms. No, there is always a solution to the problems that we have out there. Remember, Mrs. Majoni, pardon me, is also a degree holder of business, a degree holder in business administration, meaning it's not that she is not learned, of course she is, but she's opted to become a bus driver and make a living out of that than wait to get employed when she is not being employed. This should be a motivation to a lot of women out there who think maybe bus driving should only be left to men. I think she's about the third woman I'm seeing in Lusaka driving a minibus, and it's quite encouraging to see that women are also taking up these kind of jobs in order to earn them a living. Better off to do something than just fold your arms and, of course, wait for manna to fall from heaven. This is not the time of Moses. This is the 21st century where you have to work in order for you to earn a living. Our forefathers already worked, and we have to also work in order to make ends meet. It doesn't matter the kind of job that you have to do. If it means you have to sell charcoal, please just sell that charcoal. If it means you have to sell the freezits, there's nothing wrong with you buying a pack of freezits and just put them by the roadside and sell and make a living out of that. The other time my colleague and I were chatting when we were passing through town, and we saw a woman who's, of course, living with a disability by the roadside begging. She was seated in a tricycle, and she was by the roadside begging. And my colleague started telling me, can you imagine maybe if this woman went and bought that pack of freezits and just put it where she is sitting so that people are just moving around can buy the freezits from her? I think she would make good money than just maybe opting to just completely beg from would-be, of course, passerbys. So let's think business, business, and business. If we fold our arms and always just waiting for someone to stretch their arm and give us something, we cannot change our country and our status. Let's make Zambia a better place to live in by also being part of the solution of what is going around, and not just a problem to always that we are seeing too much of people complaining and complaining and complaining. You have the potential, and yes, you can do it, and the time is now. Do not wait. The problem is we procrastinate a lot. You want to do a small business. I want to do this business. Let me wait until I have a lot of money. If it means you're going to order that bag of salt, just go and order, start packing in those small plastics. Salt, for example, is consumed every day. Things like salt, things like charcoal, things like cooking oil. If you have 100 kwacha, a 200 kwacha, you're thinking of a business to start. It doesn't matter, go go and order that bag of salt, go and order that container of cooking oil, and start repackaging them in those small plastics and sell 1 kwacha, 2 kwacha. You order 200, you have a 250 as your profit, 50 kwacha as a profit. Reinvest it, you have 100 kwacha. Spend the 50, that other one, let it go back in business. Do not touch your capital. Ngakafungulukako, you can increase just from cooking oil. You go and order again salt, you have cooking oil and salt. Ngakavako, we go and order a bag of charcoal, you have cooking oil, salt, and a bag of charcoal. We would make Zambia actually a better place to live in. Even a 50 kwacha, 100 kwacha can still be capital if you are serious with what you want to do. Determination and focus will always take us to where we want to be. But when we begin to procrastinate, looking for more will never come. Even the Bible states that more is given to that one who has more. That one who's got that money and just holding on to it, even that little one they have will be taken away from them. That principle even applies in our everyday life. Maybe we just don't realize it. For example, if I have 100 kwacha that I keep to myself, and I don't maybe invest it or spend it on anything, what will happen is, kadaka 100 kwacha, panono, nalambo kula chitapo withdraw. I get a 10 kwacha, I buy something, and remember when you're consuming, you're not giving back, you just consume. Before I know it, that 100 kwacha will be completely gone. So that which I had has now been taken away because I had fear and I just kept it. But if you can defer all odds. If it means going to order jiggies, just order jiggies. I know kids with jiggies, it's a problem. Put them even in front of your yards. Just sell 1 pack, 2 pack, 3 pack. Even a 50 kwacha can still be capital if you know what you want to achieve at the end. When you make that small profit from it, invest it in something else. I've given you a tip. You can buy a bag of salt, you start repackaging, you can do cooking oil. These are consumed every day by people, and there is not a single day, if you ask those who sell, that I've not sold salt today or I've not sold cooking oil today. It's not possible. They sell almost on a daily basis. So even right about now, let's not go away from the topic of discussion, which is why are some business proposals under the Constituency Development Fund rejected? We will be joined shortly in studio by the local government Permanent Secretary, Mr. Mambo Hamaundu, where we will be discussing issues pertaining to CDF. So if you have a question with regards to that, please just phone in. Remember, this is a phone-in program, and ask the Permanent Secretary any questions that you have. So even as we allow him to settle, we are going to take a short breather, and we will be back soon. Stay tuned to Camnet TV. Remember, Camnet TV is not just another channel.
Camnet Stars Football Club, your local national team, will this Sunday, 23rd October 2022, be hosting Welcome Football Club. Time 15 hours. Venue Kablonga Boys Secondary School, the home of Camnet Stars Football Club. Don't miss these entertaining and upcoming champions of Zambia. Camnet Stars Football Club, a team born for greatness. See you there.
Coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Thank you so much for staying tuned to Camnet TV. Remember, Camnet TV is not just another channel. This morning we are discussing the Constituency Development Fund. Why do some business proposals under CDF get rejected? What am I talking about? Before we begin to dig deeper into this topic, there is a story that we aired in our news yesterday where about 70 cooperatives in Kalulushi district on the Copperbelt province have allegedly been denied money under CDF Constituency Development Fund after their cooperatives were approved, as the Kalulushi Municipal Council says it will instead buy them equipment depending on the needs of their cooperatives. In an interview with Camnet News, representative of the cooperatives say they feel that this leaves room for the misappropriation of funds by the council, as they have no means of knowing the cost and quality of the equipment, demanding to be given checks like in other parts of the country. That is one of the stories that made headline in our news, and we are going to zoom in just to hear and understand what is it that we are talking about. Let's zoom into that story even as we get to discuss this particular topic.
The concept of cooperative empowerment under the 2022 Constituency Development Fund is one aspect that was introduced to ensure that poverty at the grassroots level is reduced by funding well-deserving cooperatives in various economic activities. A number of cooperatives across the country have since been given checks to get their businesses started during special CDF grant awarding ceremonies. The recently held CDF grant awarding ceremony in Kalulushi district of the Copperbelt province was, however, unexpected after 70 selected cooperatives were only given letters of approval but no checks, and allegedly told by the council that they would be instead buying for them what they need.
Banishtoire mukwiswa makaunti abarembeshe bonse bari amupokera kulia kwino nombe falo kala kupokera kulia fish apia toalesa ina fila toalesa ina nishansha makaunti kashwa kansonga bari tusira makaunti impia shena batupefe tutampia kubomba ifwe not batukatire mpia ba minister ba kansela tabare twafo ba kansela ifwe kuno ba minister sen mutu address ba kansela ba kuno na ba MP ifwe tatushile flechitika.
My concern now is, what is the difference between Kalulushi and other districts? For instance, Kitwe. Kitwe had given checks to cooperatives, and these checks, these cooperatives were able to go into town and procure their own items. For instance, those that are in chicken rearing, they were given a check. They went into town after they were given checks. They bought the chicks, they bought the feed, they bought all the other necessary things that are needed for the rearing of chickens. But the case is different for Kalulushi.
Meanwhile, in a phone interview, Kalulushi Mayor Simama Dauti has defended the action.
When you did your project, which involves equipment, which involves buying of material and other things, you're supposed to be given as such because of the components in the CDF guidelines.
Commenting on the matter, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development Permanent Secretary in charge of administration Mamboha Maundu says equipment can only be bought if cooperatives ask for assistance from the council, adding that grants must be deposited in bank accounts or similar modes.
If the council or the local authority is offering to assist in procuring the hammer mill because of the size of the council, I don't think that there should be resistance from the cooperative when help is being rendered. However, if there are other motives other than that, then the people who have ill motives would have to face the law. Because remember, we are promoting accountability, we are promoting transparency.
The beneficiaries in Kalulushi district have called for the matter to be quickly resolved, alleging that some officials from the council could be looking for ways to benefit from the CDF. Zipporah Mshala, Camnet News.
There you have it. The beneficiaries of Constituency Development Fund in Kalulushi protesting over the decision that there will be bought equipment rather than being given resources. We are joined in studio by the Local Government and Rural Development Permanent Secretary Administration, Mr. Mambo Hamawundo. Sir, good morning.
Good morning. It's
and
good to
we
be
are
here.
glad that you've made it on the program this morning.
Oh, it's good to be here. It's good to come and have an opportunity to chat with the people and just really put a perspective in terms of what could be a misunderstanding in terms of CDF, and just generally, through you, get to know what the perception of the people out there is about the CDF.
Constituency Development Fund, the CDF, has been increased in the 2023 national budget from 25.7 million kwacha to 28.3 million kwacha, an increment despite the 2022 CDF allocation not being fully consumed due to some guidelines that were limiting that. And of course, we've also been told that there will be the review of these guidelines to ensure that the uptake of these resources is enhanced. Is that even possible? The local government minister is going to speak, the local government permanent secretary, pardon me, is also going to speak to that fact. So to just begin the ball rolling, Mr. Amawund, when we talk about Constituency Development Fund, CDF, make me and the viewer there understand, what are we talking about? What is this CDF fund?
Well, I don't think there's anything complex about the CDF really. It is money which has been made available for the communities out there in each of the 156 constituencies. And you rightly indicated, say the amount is 25,700,000 and we normally say 25.7, but it's actually 25,739,910 kwacha 92 ngwe. That is the exact amount of money which has been made available to each of the 156 constituencies. And in there, the government has given broad guidelines or parameters in which this money can be used. Government has indicated to say, out of that amount of money, 5% will be reserved for administration or be set aside for administration. That is, to attend to aspects of meetings, buying stationery, and so on and so forth. And this will be administered by the council. And of the balance will be split in the ratios 20-20-60. 20% is going to bursaries and skills development. That is where you pay for school fees or boarding fees for children, pay for skills development in trade schools, etc. Then we have another 20%. Now this 20% is for women, youth, and community empowerment.
Okay.
And in there, we're saying of every 100 kwacha that is available, 40 kwacha will be used on grants, and 60 kwacha will be used will be a loan. And then we go to the biggest component of the CDF, which is the community projects, and that is 60%. But we're also saying of that amount, 5% must be set aside as a contingency, as to deal with disasters. Just in case there's a disaster, there must be an amount of money available to deal with emergency works, of course. And this is something which we are working on, and we hope we can really crystallize it together with DMMU. So that's essentially what CDF is. It is money.
Okay, maybe just a clarity. We've seen that you've said 60% on community projects, 20% on women and youth and community, and 20% business and skills development, and 5% on administrative. That's about 105%. So which one here has been overrated? Maybe is it for the women and the youth?
No. You were not listening to me. So maybe you must listen from the beginning. So I was saying, from the 25.7 million, you calculate 5%. You set it aside. That is the money that is used for administration. Then of the balance, having taken out the 5%, that's where you now share the money in the ratio 20-20-60.
Oh,
yes.
I get that.
So it is the balance. So theoretically speaking, we are saying of 95% of the CDF is shared in the ratio 20-20-60.
And 60%.
Yes.
Okay, we got you correctly there. So now, how is when we talk about the guidelines, the Constituency Development Guidelines of 2022, we know they've been attributed as one of the hindrance, for lack of a better word to use, to the uptake of these resources. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the guidelines that are in this CDF so that people understand when you speak about the guidelines, what are we really talking about? In some of the guidelines that are in the CDF, component.
Well, I wish I had carried the guidelines with me so that I share it with you and hopefully share it with the public. But I think the document has been widely shared. And I'm of the view that, you know, many a times, you know, depending on how you speak, how I speak, how convincing I am, people out there, we can begin to drive a narrative to say the guidelines are complicated, the guidelines have done this, the guidelines have done that, when in actual fact you'd find that the person who's even talking of the guidelines has never had sight of the book. They don't even know what is contained in there. I just gave out a book to a friend of mine to say just go and have a look at it. The guidelines, it's a book just this thick, and it has a number of photos in there. It has thick print. So there's nothing complex in the guidelines. I don't think that there's anything complex at all in the CDF guidelines, as has been purported, you know, by the, I don't want to say by the public, as the narrative was being drawn to say they are complexities. Look, let's begin going component by component. Administrative costs. What triggers administrative costs? If you have a meeting, you need to buy stationery. You know, you need to buy toner. You need to get some tea. You probably need to transport people here and there. I don't think that there are any complications in there. And I would like to believe that even you, as we are seated here, you are not seeing any complication.
Of course.
We got the next component, bursaries, boarding fee bursaries, and skills development. So if you have a child, or I have a child, and my child is considered to be vulnerable, they are in a government school, they are at David Kaunda, they are at Hillcrest, or they are at Chongwe, whichever government school, they have an acceptance letter, and they have ticked all the boxes, they are considered to be vulnerable. And the CDF committee agrees to say this person is vulnerable and they must be sponsored. It's as simple as that. So a person goes into school, and the local authority, in this instance, if it is Chongwe, Chongwe City Council will pay money directly to the school. Is there anything complex about that?
Not at all.
I don't think so. If you are at Lusaka Trades, you have an acceptance letter in terms of skills, skills course. You want to do carpentry, you want to do auto mechanics. You know, you have been accepted. And the CDF committee think that you are a cause worth supporting. They pay for you at the Lusaka Trades. Is there anything complex in there? I don't think so. We go on to the next component, which is the one which has grants and loans, the empowerment fund. If you're a cooperative, you come together, 20 of you, you want to be involved in village banking, and your project has been approved. You are supposed to get 30,000 kwacha. You have provided your bank account, and that money is put in your bank account. Is there anything complex there? There's nothing complex. Loans is the only item in the CDF which we have not yet actualized. And the reason we've not yet actualized it is because we want the loans to be administered by a financial service provider. As government, we have service level agreements with a number of financial institutions. But gladly, I think, and soon, we shall actually actualize that, because we've gone through almost all the processes in terms of ensuring that we redefine our relationship with the financial service providers, so that that too can be actualized. But when it actually comes on board, you are a business person, you want to borrow money, a maximum of 200,000, 5% simple interest. You go through all the application processes, and the bank does its evaluation, and you are recommended, the minister signs, and you are given a loan. I don't think that is very, very complex, or it is complicated. I don't think so. Then we go to what is referred to as the community projects. This is where you and I, coming from Kabata constituency, we sit and agree to say, we think we need a borehole at Kabata Market, or we think we need to put some street lights in 7th Street in Kabata Site and Service, or wherever, when that decision is taken, the only thing that the local authority now needs to do is to implement your decision and my decision, that is to procure the street lights. And when they're now procuring, what kicks in is the ZPPA Act, which is what governs any public procurements. So I don't think that there are any complexities as such. It is just that because the government has decided to say we must be accountable, we must be transparent, we must ensure that everything is done without really hiding. That's why you find that people are saying, no, there are complications. Because when you look at the ZPPA Act, it has been there even before. It's not a new act. It's an act that has been there. But it's just that at times, if you do not plan, and people out there are anxiously waiting for results, that's where you create a picture to say there are complications. But it is the law. This is public money. This is not money I'm getting from my pocket, from my pocket to say, I think I need to buy bread. Here, my daughter go and buy bread, or I need to give my relatives some money in the village. Ndalama is in the paka booth for kabating in Ndalama. No, this is public money. So public money has got procedures, and one of the procedures that is there is the Procurement Act. And the Procurement Act, depending on the amounts of money involved, it takes a bit of time. But when there are aspects which just entail simplified bidding, where just one person or a committee can approve and signed off, it is easier. But where there is need for a contract, it becomes therefore necessary that the Attorney General's chambers get involved, because it is contractual. It's a contract between the government, directly or indirectly, and another party. And it becomes necessary that it is cleared, because the fear is, or what we don't want to happen is that you sign a contract which commits the government and therefore commits you and me, without you knowing to say, as you are pending your signature, you're actually committing yourself to, paying so much money. But because you might not be a lawyer, or you don't understand what you're signing, you might put everyone in a situation. That's why the Attorney General's chambers get involved. So in terms of complexities, really, I don't think that there are any complexities. The only thing that needs to be done, and which is now happening, is that we need to begin to plan on how you want to utilize your resources. You did indicate that the Minister of Finance actually has increased the allocation of CDF from 25.7 to 28.3. And as we speak now, people in constituencies have begun to plan on how they intend to utilize this particular resource, because this is more money which has been made available. You are saying 25.7 has not been spent.
The uptake of the resources has been low. These are some of the concerns that have been raised. And we did see that even when the Bank of Zambia held its monetary policy announcement meeting last time, they did mention to say we are having private sector credit rating degrading due to the fact that government has collected these huge sums of money which is not being released in the economy, because it's just been held in account somewhere. So as a result, the private sector has no resources to spend. And we know that CDF has been that one area where we are being told that the consumption has been quite low. And this was also approved by the Ministry of Finance at one of the meetings. So why has there been this low uptake of the resources? Where is the challenge here?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, because at times you see even as media outlets, sometimes what you report, you don't give a date. For instance, when the Minister of Finance was or people from Finance Ministry indicated to say the uptake is still low, I think that was sometime in they were looking at a position sometime in June. And at that point, people are still saying there are complications in CDF, etc., etc. And as a ministry, were a bit more deliberate. We engaged the public. We had discussions. We wanted to put a perspective to the people out there to say, look, there is money available for you, and this is how you can access it, and this is how it can be utilized. So for me, I guess it was a situation where, first of all, you were saying, look, we were at 1.6, and the 1.6 million was not being utilized, or it actually did not come through. But when you look at 2022, and you look at the integrity of the budget or the budgeting process, I think that has been restored, because government is religiously funding each and every institution at the time the resources are required. And for people who have been in the public sector for a long time, some of them are actually getting started to say, we didn't think that this is possible. So the same thing now applies to the CDF. You know, people in the local authorities, some of them were saying, well, look, we had 1.6. Sometimes it would come, sometimes it would not come. And they were thinking maybe this will be a similar case. So you'd find that it is more centered around aspects of attitude. Will this money be available, or it is just a story? But the reality now is, it is not a story. The money is there, and the money is actually being utilized. And I think you were just showing a clip here where people in Kalulushi are complaining. It is because they are fed to say people in Chipata have been given grants, people in Kabwata have been given grants, people in Kafue, all over across the country, they are seeing activities happening every day. To say these have gotten grants. There are other places where they are supplying desks in 2 schools. There are children, numbers of them, I think in excess of 20,000, who have been paid for in school. They are in school now courtesy of the Constituency Development Fund. So when you look at the aspect of low uptake, it is not necessarily that there is low uptake. It is because we had not planned in advance. I'm saying we had not planned in advance because I am the controlling officer of, I can say I'm council number 1. All the councils are under my supervision. And therefore, I cannot sit here and say that council is useless, because I'll be saying I'm useless myself. So the challenge that we had is that we were not planning in advance, but now we are planning in advance. I say we are planning in advance because we are the ones who are implementing. We are not the ones who are making the decision as the council, but we are the ones who are implementing. So we are encouraging members of the Constituency Development Fund Committee to plan in advance. We are putting in place mechanisms, timelines to ensure that things are done well in advance, so that when we get into 2023, it will just be a question of implementing and spending the resources. Government has been very deliberate. I think the President has given us tasks to accomplish. In 2024, or by the end of 2023, he has directed to say no child in a public school must be sitting on the floor. Meaning that we need to ensure that all the schools across the country have a desk or have desks, so that any child who's enrolled is sitting on a desk, as opposed to what could be happening now, where we have a number of our children who are not sitting on desks. So he wants a conducive learning environment for the children, and that is one of the things that we'll be focusing on as we go into the year 2023. How do we ensure that this is accomplished? It's not a question of will it be or will it be accomplished. It must be accomplished. It is a must. So we must ensure that this is done. So this all entails forward planning. So when you look at the aspects of absorption, really, it will no longer be an issue, because money is available, and people are beginning to realize, to say the budgeting process has got integrity. The money will be made available. And others at the beginning of the year when it was announced to say it is 25.7 million, they were saying it's not possible that government can put forth this money. Not possible. But the reality is government has made the money available.
There are some people arguing, Mr. Amaundu, to say the money is just on paper. The fact that we can't see it means there is no money. It's just on paper where they are saying money is there.
This is what I'm saying. Who's that person who's arguing to say that the money is not there? You know, I can't, it's like you talking to me here and saying, Mr. Amaundu, you are not here. When you are seeing me, I'm seated right here. Or maybe you don't know me, that's why you are saying I'm not here. Government has released, as of the time of the budget, the minister indicated to say 75% of the CDF resource had been made available. And I can actually confirm, I indicated to say I'm the controlling officer at the Ministry of Local Government. We received 75% of the financing. And as of 2 days ago, the total amount of money that we had received in terms of CDF funding is in excess of 3.8 billion. And the budget is just slightly over 4 billion. So that gives you an indication to say government is almost getting to 100% funding. And from a ministry's point of view, we have disbursed half of the money to the councils or to the constituencies through the councils. And we are monitoring them now. We want to ensure that we do not have challenges when it comes to utilization of this resource. We are asking questions to say, those who've applied for grants and the approvals have been done, have they been given the money? If they have not been given, we are asking a question to say, what is the issue? What is the delay? And like I said, it's something which appears to have been a new phenomena, but very soon, all the people in the local authorities, it will be part of their DNA. They will be functioning at the required level, because the president has been very categorical to say that for us, the culture will be work, work, and work. So we need to work, work, and work, because the people out there are very expectant. The people out there are expecting to see results. And when you say, sometimes you say this money is not being seen, you should go to Lubansenshi and ask the people of Lubansenshi to say, are you not seeing the money? Because they made a decision to say one of their mortuaries, the fridge was not functioning properly, and CDF has kicked in to deal with that particular problem. If you go to my village in Chikuni, not so long ago, a roof was damaged of a theater, and 95,000 kwacha has been made available through CDF to repair that particular roof. I was in Pemba not so long ago. A road is being graded. Katuba, just nearby here, there are a number of road works that are happening. If we now come into Lusaka Central, this is Lusaka Central where Camnet is. I'm sure that if you interviewed some people within Lusaka Central, they will tell you that cooperatives last week or the other week were getting their checks for CDF. So when you say that the money is not being seen, I tend to wonder. Yes, there could be a few people or some people who have not seen it because they've not applied for it, or they just want to say they've not seen it because they don't know the form in which this CDF is coming. But at the end of the day, you will be able to see that a number of activities will be in place as a result of CDF. And these will be made public. I've indicated to say we are a government which wants to be accountable, which wants to be transparent, and which wants to be available to scrutiny by the public. So we are not shying away from going to the public to say this is what is actually happening. So I think that it's just a narrative really which was being driven to say this is what is happening. Often at times, if in these residential areas, mweti mankala makombo mankala ta muntu one day wakona chewe in the D's story and the compound yonse amount ni wachakolwa. Even when I've just been drunk once, the narrative will go around. For me to change this narrative, even if I go to church and they see me repenting and praying, it will still be difficult for them. They'll be saying, no, it is the way our minds operate sometimes. We want to feed more on negative stories than the positive aspects of it. If you ask me, CDF is actually doing quite some substantial good to the communities out there. And I think it's in our interest that we embrace it, because CDF is actually a game changer. CDF is improving and will continue improving the livelihoods of the people. CDF will improve the infrastructure within the constituencies. CDF is giving you and me an opportunity to decide on what we need in our constituencies, because look, many a times we tend to sit and say, boma izachita chane hapa. No, hii road tashupika. No, hapo kwenye ufuniki at least kwenzeko boho hapa mali mtendee research shupa. Government has said you can make that decision. You can decide to say you can put up a boho for as long as it is feasible to put it there. So you are the decision makers as a people. That is what decentralization entails. That is what local governance entails. That is the authority that government has actually given to the people of the country. Ministry of Local Government Permanent Secretary Mr. Mambo Hamawondo is in studio with us this morning, and we are discussing Constituency Development Fund. The big question that everyone asks is, why are certain projects under CDF rejected? And that is a topic of discussion this morning, which we will be throwing, of course, to our guests. So if you have a question that you have to ask with regards to CDF, I know I personally have been receiving a lot of complaints and a number of issues that I will present to the PS today, and hope some of those questions that we have will be answered. The biggest question, Mr. Hamawondo, is why are certain projects under CDF rejected? Okay, I'm being told there is a caller. Let's see if we still have that. Sir, good morning. Good morning.
Hello?
Sir, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, please, madam.
Yes, sir. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from, then you can go ahead with your question.
I'm calling from Chama.
It's good to know Chama is tuned in this morning.
Chama is just okay, but the church still there putting our boss out. Yeah, constituency fund in drama. It is one of the constituency fund in drama. Even Papel Pachapi, Kuki, Makamani, Montalivis in drama, one community in drama, the whole country, city thing out. Budget drama, for drama, it's okay. Although the budget 2021, you CDF in Achoka. Wanapeleka kunanga singa inanga yatoka 2022 budget ya constituency fund ndirama mukaba sichoka but it is one tukanga utakareza yako ya ndio sitoleka afuna kunupata makuli fataleza sitna wangili ada bwehadi.
All right, so what part of Chama is that? Hello? Oh, it seems we lost that caller. Mr. Abba, just a question that I asked earlier. Someone there in Chama says, so we are just hearing that money is there. I would have loved actually to know whether it's Chama North or Chama South, because there are two constituencies in Chama. And I think that the Honorable MP for one of the Chama constituencies, Honorable Mtea Chalo, actually did even publish on his Facebook page to say, when they received the money for CDF, I think they've given out grants, they've done a number of boreholes, and I think for me it is a question of some people not having information. He tries to say that there's CDF for 2021. No, he's indicated even 2021, which he says might not have been utilized. So I think it's a question of information being put forth to say, this is what is happening, because some people are actually thinking to say at Kambato CDF Ndarama Ziriko, we will go and give them money to say is in Ndarama. CDF near community. Yes, let me hold you a little bit. Let's pick up another call. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Okay, it seems we lost that caller. Keep calling the number that are on the screen. If we unable to pick up your call, we will pick it up when you call, maybe for the second or for the third time. But let's get to interact and hear what you have to say. P.S., you can continue with your explanation. Then also, yes. I asked a question earlier to say, why is it that some projects under CDF are rejected, some business proposals are rejected under the Constituency Development Fund? Why has this been the case?
It would be good if you ask me specific questions to say, in such a constituency, this was the application and it was rejected. And what we have guided the constituencies is that when you reject a proposal, you must actually tell the applicant the reasons why the proposal has been rejected. Because at times, people just come out and say, our project has been rejected. When in actual fact, what they've probably been told is that, look, we had 100 applicants. And out of the 100 applicants, we have picked 50. And therefore, the other 50 will have to wait because we have a budget limitation. We have, for grants as an example, the total amount of money which is available is around 1,956,000. So you cannot go beyond the 1,956,000. So when you've already picked so many cooperatives to get that money, for the rest you have to tell them to say, wait till next year, we'll consider you. So that is not necessarily a rejection, but it is just that there is a limitation in terms of funds which are available. So the funds that are available can only take in so much. So I think that is again, for me, it's a good indication. It's a good problem in that if we have more people who are keen, who want to participate in utilization of this resource for betterment of their society, it's a good thing, and that is what we desire as government. We need to interact.
Okay, let's pick up another caller. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from.
I'm calling you from Chipata.
It's good to know Chipata is tuned in this morning, sir. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yes. Good morning. Is it the PS?
Yes, sir. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Now, part of the contribution is helpful, but however, I just wanted to note if you need to know that even if you take the security initiative, you want to empower those that are not able to access funds from personal people the grant. But you know that most people are using up because of the process that has been put in place for them to register this cooperative. Because the only thing for people who access this fund, that's the registration. And I know, I'm aware that you have put that to the registrar of cooperative. Essentially, for people to have picked access of their certificate, for them to be able to certificate. But that is, I want to tell you that I have looked in that agreement, that in Chilanga, and in Chilanga, we are taking the water because that is a village.
Sir, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, the line is pretty bad. Okay. The line was quite bad. We couldn't hear you because it kept breaking. That's why we had to cut. But you can call and make that submission. And ensure that when you're calling to make contributions, you tune down the volume to your TV set or your radio or whatever platform you are using. And then also go where there is some good network. We were unable to hear you, but if I got him correctly, he's talking about the issue of cooperative registration. And this also has been one cardinal issue that keeps coming out to say the process that is involved in registering cooperatives sometimes is quite complicated. I think we even covered an instance in Lusaka where a female-led group that was trying to register a cooperative just had to give up. They were just like, we are done. It's just too complicated. You go there, they tell you to write a business proposal. If you want a business proposal, then you are told to pay this amount of money. So they just had to give up like that. They said, if we tell our fellow cooperative member to say, no, we need to pay for this, put money together, they are saying, so they had to give up. So maybe you can also speak to the registration of cooperative, the complications that have been assigned to the registration of cooperative. And of course, the writing of business proposals. Just last week, I received a phone call, in fact, this week on Monday, from someone in Lusaka's material compound. And their complaint was that, please tell the minister for us to say the issue of writing business proposals, some of us, we have no idea. And it has been an hindrance to us. So maybe if government can come up with an initiative where maybe they just start using questionnaires to people like us, rather than telling us to write business proposals. So maybe what is your submission with regards to these two topics?
I think that is the whole essence really of coming up to a platform such as this one, is to get feedback from the public, to have an understanding the challenges that they are facing. And once we know what the challenges that they're facing, it will inform us in terms of what we need to do. Secondly, it is also important to note that when you are in a cooperative, when you are in a group, we are all differently skilled. There are some people who can't come and sit in front of the camera and talk to the public. But that does not mean that me who's sitting in front of the camera and talking to the public am more intelligent than they are. No, but I will listen to them and they'll give me advice and I'll come and speak in front of the camera. So the point I'm trying to drive home is that when you are in a cooperative, as you are coming together, you must bring together people who are differently skilled. You must have people who are able to write, others who are able to read, others who are able to pray, others who are practical, because there are others who can put together a business plan, but when it comes to actually doing the work, they are nowhere. That is the whole essence of coming together. It is to work together. As a people in the country, we don't think in a similar manner. We are not same when it comes to thinking, just like we look different. So it is important that we begin to come together and work together. When there's a problem, it is not always that you have to say, what is the government doing about this? Who is the government? It is you and me. You are the local government. You are the local leadership. Local leadership entails you are the local government. You have to come up with solutions. It's not always that you must pass on these problems to central government. No. Some things you can sit and agree and see who can actually really help. And the issue of cooperatives, yes, in January, February, perhaps March, there was a lot of outcry to say it is difficult to register cooperatives, it's difficult to form cooperatives. Again, this was a new phenomenon to many. When you've not done it before, you'd actually think it is difficult. But if you've done it before, and you're told to say, go and register a cooperative, it becomes a bit easier, because you know that when I go to the registrar of cooperatives, this is what they'll be requesting for. And many a times, the things that are requested for are a requirement of the law. And who are the custodians of the law? It is the people. So it is a decision which the people have made to say, for you to form a cooperative, you must be a minimum of 10 in number. For you to form a cooperative, you must state the objectives of the cooperative. It's a requirement of the law. Yes, it's unfortunate that a few or a number of our people are unable to really put up these, but what is also true is that a significant number of people have managed to register the cooperatives. Remember earlier on, I was stating to say that the challenge that we have is that where 20 people succeed and 5 fail, the focus will be on the 5. Yeah, in Voshupa, kudemsa cooperative is at Nakangi Watinarek, because the 20 who've registered will not come to the public and say, me, I registered my cooperative within 1 week. And then when they come to you, that is probably not news. The news is the one who's failed. So at the end of the day, I think we must probably be asking ourselves questions to say, what do we want to accomplish out of this? Is forming of cooperatives a good thing? The answer is yes, it is a good thing. Is the expanded CDF a good thing? The answer is a clear yes, it is a good thing. Let us also look at the good aspect of it, ride on it, to ensure that we accomplish more as a people. You know, when it's a similar thing when you have a child. A child goes to school. A child is performing very well in civic education, in bookkeeping or business studies, in English, but perhaps they've got a bad grade in maths, and you start saying, this is a child who's good in 3, 4, 5, 6 subjects. Just because they are bad in one subject does not mean that overall they are bad pupil. So we must learn to encourage one another as opposed to try and bring down ourselves. CDF was 1.6 million. It's now 25.7. Increment of over 1,600%. And decisions have been taken to the people to say, decide on what you want to do in your community. Of course, there are a number of challenges that we are facing in these communities, and they will not all be solved in 1 year. It will take a bit of time, but what is important is a significant stride has been taken towards addressing these particular challenges. Money is being given to you, and you are being told to say next year you'll be given 28.3, which is a good thing. So we must just begin to plan on how we need to utilize the resources to improve the circumstances of our communities. And when you're looking at our communities, you know, in the process, some family units will also benefit. Those who are involved in business, they'll benefit. In the rural parts of this country, there are a number of schools, classroom blocks, which are being constructed out of CDF. Where is the labor force being drawn from? Within the villages. The cement is being bought within the neighboring towns. That is business being generated, business which is employing people residing in these particular areas. So there are a number of attendant benefits that will arise as a result of the Constituency Development Fund. And remember, government has been deliberate to say, for you to access business, you need to reside in that constituency, or your business needs to be domiciled in that constituency. What might actually happen at the end of the day is, in areas which are overpopulated, because people have been coming to Lusaka, have been going into Ndola, into Kitwe, have been going into Kabwe, in search of opportunities. Some of them, if they had the choice, they would rather stay in their village than come and live in an area where you are renting one room and you are living father, mother, children in a small room. You know, they would rather go back to the village, but they'll tell you to say, vuto ili kochabe mwananga, tikapiza chance kumunzi, tingaendi. Manje problem kumunzi, kulibe vechitika, kulibe business. But government has now said, vintu vambo chitika kumunzi. Rural development. Sitikamba kumunzi kuchinje mkale mtao na kumunzi kunkale developed so that ngani ulimi through CDF vuto emwenzi nayo enze chani enzi yakuti kabina kulibe depo pafupi or kabina mbe storage shed. You put up a storage shed in your neighborhood so that as you grow your crop, when it is harvested, you have got somewhere to store it before it is bought by either the food reserve agencies or private entities that will come in to buy. So government is being deliberate by empowering the people to make decisions for the betterment of their communities. A number of people don't want to go into these rural areas, teachers, nurses, because they say, I can't singa senze kumunzi. Could be nyumba, could be malaiti, but through the CDF, people are now putting up solar lighting systems in some areas. They are growth areas. And when I say this, I'm actually not saying that central government overall is no longer participating in improving the socio-economic status of many of these areas. No. There are still projects which are being handled at a central government level. I'm from the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. We have under rural development this year, we had 130 million kwacha in our rural development component, and most of this money has gone towards improving crossing points. Okay. The brother who was calling from Chama, I think Chama has been given 8 million kwacha to work on crossing points, because some parts of Chama, when it rains, you cannot go to the other side because there are no bridges. So government is saying, here is money, work on your crossing points. So it is a continuous process, and hopefully, when we sit back end of 2023, there will be notable progress that would have been made. Remember, before 2021, there was a narrative in this country. There was a strong narrative to say there's a lot of development. Everywhere you go, there's development.
Give you 1 minute to conclude.
Yes, everywhere you go, there's development. There are roads that are being built everywhere. But if there are roads which were being built everywhere, if there's development which was being done everywhere, why is it that people in Chama are complaining to say there are no roads? Why is it that people in most parts of the country are saying the roads are in a horrible state when there was massive development? So let us be sincere with one another. Let us ensure that as we drive the developmental agenda, let's be practical about it. And like I said, because you have failed in 2 out of 10, it doesn't mean that you have failed. You're actually distinct. So let us not hold on to this 20% failure, and it's the only thing that will amplify. We'll be demotivating ourselves, we'll be stressing ourselves unnecessarily, and denying ourselves an opportunity to celebrate the success that we have accomplished as a people. CDF is there for the people, it will work for the people, it will improve the lives of the people, and we must celebrate it together. I thank you for giving me an opportunity to come through here.
A lot of people would have loved to speak to you, but unfortunately we had to stop them because we ran out of time. And hopefully we can have Mr. Hamaundu back in studio one of these coming days to just come and conclude where we've ended today. A lot of questions. I know we had a lot of questions to ask, but time could not allow us. So we appreciate every viewer who stayed with us on this program, those who called, and I know quite a number of messages on our Facebook platform. I apologize that we weren't able to read them due to time, but next time we will do just that. So we were in studio joined by the local government, Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development Permanent Secretary for Administration, Mr. Mambo Hamaundu, and we were discussing the Constituency Development Fund. Why is it that some projects under CDF are rejected? Answer has been given. In case you're just tuning in, this also was being streamed live on our Facebook page. You can just go a little bit back and listen to the discussion that we had. So from me, your host, Prudence Chota, and the entire Camnet TV production team, it's bye for now, and God bless you. Remember, Camnet TV is not just another channel.